everyone. I'm Kelly Kovac, founder of Beauty Matter. I hope you're all enjoying your summer, and thank you for taking the time to join us today as we dive into a topic that's universal and one that has taken on new importance in a post-pandemic world, and that's wellness. Today's guest is Chaba Lucas, president of Modern Age Warriors, who's been coaching world-class athletes, business leaders, and corporations for 3 decades. Let's get started. In full transparency, Chaba has been my coach for over a decade and has been integral in helping me and John Caffarelli, our COO, build our culture at Beauty Matter. So Chaba, thank you so much for joining and for your collaboration. We've talked about it for a long time, but this is our first stab at it.
Yes, thank you, Kelly, and thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
Yeah. So because context matters, and as a way of setting the foundation for today's conversation, can you share a little bit about your background and the work you do?
Sure, no problem. Well, first of all, I just want to put that out there that sometimes I need to pinch myself because I was born in Hungary, as maybe you guys are picking up that I have an accent. I was born in Hungary still when it was a communist country. And I remember clearly my dreams as a little boy when I lived in the countryside. And I remember we just got a TV because back then people didn't have in Eastern Europe, necessarily TVs. So we just got a TV and I loved it so much. It was so fascinating. And I was dreaming about it. How cool would that be to have a tiny TV that I can take anywhere and I could watch it all the time? I was just fascinated with that idea. And I keep going back there because obviously I traveled across the world and I had the chance to kind of live the dream, my dream at least. And then I pinch myself sometimes that, oh my gosh, it's like, I remember the days when there was TV only on certain days. And now we have these tiny gadgets. I connect with people all around the planet. And it is truly a dream. And I think it's very easy to forget about that. And I feel like my duty as a coach is to remind people how amazing things truly are. And many times people come back to me, yeah, you're a privileged guy, right? Well, yes, it's a possibility that I'm privileged, but at the same token, there are many studies about this, how much our worldview is skewed. So what I feel my life passion is to try to somehow gear people towards an angle where they can revisit the beauty and the excitement about the world and how everything works. So that's really where my heart is at and how my heart sort of was taken this direction that I started to work first with athletes now over 30 years ago, which is scary. And then, had the good fortune to succeed with many of them, and then with sports teams. And eventually I worked with a lot of different type of individuals, which, seeped my way into the world of business. But it's really funny that you're talking to me about, in many regards, corporate wellness related stuff. So you're talking to an ex-communist, an ex-socialist guy, right? So, and that's an interesting conversation by itself. But I am a big, big advocate of every aspect of capitalism and the world of business. Yet that doesn't mean there is a perfection present there. So I think there's a lot of different things to dig in there. So that's basically my background. And I'm going to just give it back over to you so you can lead it.
Yeah. So, we sort of floated this idea of the idea that a concept called never examined xenagog transformation. So what is that?
I'm not going to tell you. I'm really not going to answer this question right now because then there's no point for us to talk. So
all right,
why don't we do this? We go through our conversation and
all
at
right.
the end, I will give you an answer. Okay. But let's hope that the whole conversation is going to be about that. What's next? Okay.
I love that tactic because now people are going to have to stay for the entire webinar to find out.
And you know what? Let's talk about that for 1 second. I've been on many webinars in a sense of like I watched many of them, so on and so forth. And I know how that goes. It's very informal. It's not like the live events. I usually do a lot of live events, but this one is people probably do dishes on the side, they kind of do other kind of stuff, brushing their teeth, right? Which is all good. But I just want to say something about that. If you are interested to dig yourself into anything, attention is needed. Otherwise, all you're going to do is going to continue with the same patterns that you already know. Now, if someone wants to have a transformation in some regards in their worldview, if you want to change something, it requires attention. So in the case you're brushing your teeth right now, just finish it, spit it out, come here, sit down and concentrate with us. So together in this guided exploration, we can really maybe get somewhere, because it's not a linear answer. I'm not going to talk about linearity here, because linear answers you can kind of find anywhere. There's more to it. And what I mean by linear answers is, there's about 11 million bytes per second of information that the human brain is able to take in every given second. That's a huge amount of data that's coming our way, but consciously we can only get about 40 to 50 bytes per second, which is like a scary notion. So whatever is coming your way, there's consciously something you can connect with, but there's much more that's coming your way. So hopefully, if you're engaged, if you are inspired, if you get connected with us here, then you're going to get more than just the 40 to 50 bytes per second that in a linear fashion you can make sense of. But you're going to feel a sense of existence, an example maybe, how passionately you and I can talk about this subject of caring about a company, caring about people who are connected to a company, and looking towards the future. What is the trend of the future, right?
Yeah, I mean, because what you've instilled in me, but I'm still working on it, is the fact that we are not built to multitask, because we're not computers. So what you've just described is what most of us do throughout the day, is thinking that we're being more efficient by multitasking, but we're really not built for it.
Well, yes, that's the thing, that you have your highest wisdom that you can base your actions on. The highest wisdom becomes available to you when you're really like, okay, what's the absolute best thing I could do right now? And then you're like, okay, the best thing to really pay attention and try to see if I can make a difference right now, right? That's my highest wisdom. But what happens if you're multitasking? You're not listening to your highest wisdom. All you do is basically acting out certain patterns, automated patterns that you already put in place. Therefore, you're not going to be able to, focus with your best attention. It's going to be more like just patterns that you already know. So you're going to kind of overhear some things, and something that catches your attention that probably you already know. You're, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's that. So you will finish this hour, multitasking. And at the end of the hour, you're like, oh yeah, cute conversation. Awesome. I guess my hunches were right? That's it. But if you put your best wisdom, ahead, and you're like, okay, let's just really try to concentrate here, and let me write some questions if things come up for me, right, during the conversation, then might be able to discover something more. Maybe there's a line of thought that's going here, not just in a linear fashion, but underneath as well,
Okay, so now hopefully we've gotten everyone to stop what they're doing and pay attention. So, workplace wellness and mental health has become a really important topic. Employees are demanding it, and businesses have been forced to address it either out of a true desire to do things differently post-pandemic, or out of necessity if they want to retain and attract the best talent. This is a huge topic, but it's definitely in the wheelhouse that you work in. So I'd love for you to share your thoughts on the need for, and also the process of creating a culture of wellness in a corporate environment.
Okay, so let's talk about rhino hunting in a traditional way. How about that? I'll try to make sense of this. Rhino hunting with traditional tribes would work like this. And I'm talking here going way back. Okay. There's the rhino, and you want to take it down because it will be very useful. I mean, rhinos are now endangered, so maybe it's a bad example, but they were not endangered, let's say, 20,000 years ago. Okay. So the way how they hunted rhinos, they jumped in front of the rhino and they waved their hands. The rhino charged at the individual, and the individual in the last second jumped to the side, because the rhinos are kind of clumsy when it comes to aiming right to the target. And in that given second, once the person jumped to the side, another hunter needed to jump up and get the attention of the rhino. The rhino turned around, saw what was going on, ran at that one. And then the person jumped to the side again, and they did that for like half an hour hour. And at that point, the rhino kind of got a heart attack. So when you hunt like this for rhinos, coming back to, ancient the world, what happens is you are really interconnected with the people who you did the work together with. That means you were hunting together with others, and you guys were dependent on each other. One without the other couldn't survive, couldn't complete the task, right? Now, you might say, yeah, well, what's relevance to that? Well, every type of hunting for human being and gathering was like that. We interdepended on each other. This is how we are wired as human beings. Now, you might say that, well, the world doesn't operate like this anymore. Well, yeah, but you're still wired for that type of social interconnectedness. And every time we forget that, that's when we can make choices where we are not able to access the absolute best in human beings, the best version, the best thing that we could bring to the table. Because that's what we are wired for, to really care about each other to levels where literally you would give your life for another human being. Now, you might want to sign off right now and say, well, that's not realistic. Who's talking about this kumbaya utopian world? Well, I think that's the future. I think everything, if you really look at it, coming in a circle in many regards, right? I believe the future of business is where business is going to have to stand for more than just maximizing the profit, at least for a while, until they realize that while I'm going about things differently, ultimately it will also lead to maximizing the profit. But there is another step that needs to happen there. And that step, we are standing on the edge of this cliff as a world, as corporations, and some of them trying to jump off, some actually jumped off. There are examples where this kind of new level of care has been taking place, but most of the world is kind of hovering there for, let's say, the past 15 years in my estimate. Because right after Second World War, there was a way how corporations started to work. And it kind of made sense, right? After the Second World War and so on. So there are certain things needed to buckle down. We need to buckle down and get stuff back together so the world started to work again. The buckling down aspect, I think, was kind of necessary. We were out of balance during the Second World War, and we needed to swing all the way to the other side, because it's very difficult to come straight back to balance from out of balance. Usually, just like a pendulum, you kind of swing and eventually find the sweet spot. So I feel like organizations developed at the time to deal with that very bad scenario, and they kind of overcompensated in many regards. We had to just really, we need to really unite and work hard to create stuff because stuff was destroyed. Now, I feel like we're gradually getting back to that middle line here slowly. And the last 15 years, I mean, just look at Google, look at any of those companies that are famous about, bringing ping pong tables in, and, some of the companies that I worked with, they wanted to make an effort to create like a different way. And it is fashionable. It is trendy. But at this point now, after a pandemic, right, now there's another level of, pressure existing front of corporations. People are demanding more. Employees are demanding more a different way, right? So, and this is why we're sitting here, and corporate wellness is connected to those demands. And what are those demands? That's what we want to talk about. So I think as a background to this whole idea, the social context of this all is essentially this. This is why we're asking these questions right now, right here.
So, I think that there are a lot of things that businesses talk about, and sometimes they're just boxes that get checked off, right? Because, the consumers are demanding it or employees are demanding it. So they're going to say, yes, we're building a wellness culture. And, maybe they, go through maybe the steps of doing it. Maybe, they bring in a massage therapist one day, but it's really not, they're kind of throwing things at wellness rather than changing the culture. Like, how do you really make change?
I think there's two things that we need to discuss. One, if you're building a company, how you're building the culture that needs to be paid attention first, almost before anything. what kind of culture, what kind of environment I want to create with this business, instead of just, oh, I want to make a buck, or there's a business opportunity here. I think what needs to take place is people early on pay attention. What culture am I hiring with? What culture am I raising funds with? What leaders will fit this cultural idea I'm trying to create? So that's one. If you have an existing corporation, company, doesn't matter the size of it, and you want to change its culture, you want to improve its culture or deepen it or take it to the next level, whatever way you want to call it. Now that's um, it's another process. Now, I want to be just very candid here. I had the good fortune to work with many different size and type of companies, from tiny ones to Fortune 500, all kinds of different ones. And there is one tendency here that I can safely tell you that I would put money behind this. If the leadership does not live and breathe the change, nothing is really going to happen. This is just going to be opposing, checking boxes, which is fine, but you're not going to have the competitive edge in front of others. If you are not ready as a leader, as a founder, as a CEO, as part of the leadership team, to full on go with these new cultural ideas, the culture is never going to change, because every decision you make with the company needs to be filtered through that cultural, view, right? So I think might sound obvious, but it's not about the employees first. It's gotta be first with the leadership, and I'll tell you exactly why. The leadership has tremendous amount of pressure on it. I worked with many CEOs, and I tell you, what an American, specifically American, the rest of the world as well, but specifically American leadership has such a pressure on them. They don't really allow them to breathe. And I always look at CEOs and I'm like, you guys you take a lot. Now, when a CEO trying to please, and they have to, right? The the shareholders, right? For example, there's a certain set of things that they need to deliver, and its profit is the bottom line many times. Now, I think if someone really wants to go into the future, and I would really bet on this, if you look 20 years from now, what's going to happen is that there were some people, some leaders, CEOs, who were literally had the gut check, and they said, you know what? I think at this time in the world, you truly need to be a hero when you're leading something. And when you're willing to go with that idea and you say, I am going to bring my absolute best wisdom to the table, which could be, if I take really good care of the stakeholders, my employees in the company, then my employee is going to be so charged up that they can take really good care of the other stakeholders, the customers in my company. And if the customers are charged up, right, they're going to take care of the shareholders, another stakeholder in the company. And if the shareholders are taken care of, they're going to take care of the leadership. So it's like a circle, right? We have to remember that there are multiple different type of stakeholders in an organization. Some of them work within, some of them the outside of it, customers, But the only place where change can take place is a true wild commitment from leadership. Live it and breathe it themselves. It cannot be that you say, yeah, you guys do that because I think that's a good idea. Because everything will stop with you. At one point, as the culture is trying to change, if you didn't change, you will stop it. I've seen this even with sports teams, but many other companies like, and I'm talking about sports companies that own teams, right? Where the head honcho basically brought my projects on board and everything got rolling. But at the end of the day, the real paradigm shift stopped with the top. And that's the problem. So this is where the real obstacle lays. So, but if you look at someone like, the PayPal, went through a very interesting change during the past few years, how they looked at what do they want to become in the future. Now, that leadership went for it, and they did something very different. They wanted to look at things differently. And I think that's what we need. We need just leadership who are brave and willing to shake off the pressures that they have on, that they were put on, you know?
So, in the beauty and CPG space, there are a lot of founders. So you start with an idea
Mhm.
and maybe even an idea of a culture. Many of these founders raise lots of venture money. So there's inherent sort of pressure there and expectations. And, a lot of these cultures have become toxic.
Yeah.
It's well documented. I think, part of it is also about this kind of call out culture we live in, which honestly is a whole other pressure on leadership that I think isn't contemplated. As like, is my action going to end up on Estee Laundry and I'm going to have to manage that? But, I think a lot of the things that are left out of these stories is really the pressure and isolation that comes with being a founder. And, while, yeah, sure, it's part of the job, I guess, what skills or how do you teach, I guess, founders sometimes founders are CEOs, but I think being a founder is a little bit different than running a publicly traded company because it moves faster. It's a bit more organic. There's a lot of chaos sometimes. But, how can you avoid creating those kind of toxic cultures that are very often, created by founders that, quite frankly, are just burnt out?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, a burnt out founder will have no shot of creating anything but burnt out cultures. Being burnt out can show up in many different ways. And this is the personal responsibility. It's very easy today to be distracted and pointing and making excuses. And I think people, when they have the opportunity to lead a group of people, even if it's like two people or 100 or 1,000, they have to just be like, all right, I really got to do well here, and I'm going to have to really go home inside of myself for a little bit and let's see what's going on there, right? If you are making decisions in business, you know, towards people who are working for you, and those decisions you would say, and I heard this many times, oh, this is just business. It's like, it's different decisions you need to make. Well, that's on the surface. Most people say, yeah, I mean, people are different at business and different in their personal life. Well, I had the good fortune to see into the deepest secrets of people's lives. And I tell you, whatever decisions they make business wise, those are decisions they're making at home as well. Of course, the wording is different, but the effect is the same. So someone who's feared at work because they are a feared leader, right? They are also feared at home. Most people don't see inside people's homes, so it's easy to have that image today. They put 5 pictures, nice, smiling, fun, loving, hugging pictures of families on social media, and everyone like, oh, look at that, he's so tough at work, but he's obviously loving at home. It's not. It doesn't work like this. There's nowhere to hide. And indeed, most CEOs, founders, leaders, when you get their attention and when you have the one-on-one, honest, deep conversations, they will tell you that, you know what? I feel very alone. I'm frustrated. I don't see the point. I'm jaded. And I'm like, I have everything. I look great on paper. Even, I have loving family, beautiful kids, wife, husband, whatever you have. But inside, I feel like I can be found out. I feel like I feel a sense of guilt, but whatever. I'm just gonna work hard, right? This mentality. Now that's what needs to be examined, and that's where it all starts. It starts deep, 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 and I'm not kumbaya about these things, but that's where it's got to start. You need to be braver than ever to make changes. The people today in this ever-changing, fast-changing world, there is a level of bravery that needed, just like the rhino hunters jumping away front of, the out of the way of the rhino, trusting that the other people will be there for them. If a leader is able to make that level of, I'm gonna just jump from, stand in front of that rhino, and I will hire the right people that I know when I jump away, they will get the attention of the rhino. That's the thing. This is how humans meant to operate. In war, there's the PTSD. It's a great example. PTSD, everyone hears about it, right? And everyone thinks, soldiers go away and they are in war and they see very bad things and they come back and they suffer because of what they saw. Now, if you dig deeper in that, there are people who are really in this space and they will tell you something different. They will tell you that, well, when you're at war, you realize that there's a camaraderie within your platoon where you literally, your life depends on the other. And then once you find those human relationships, right, and you're ripped away from it by coming back to this mundane world, then you're kind of at loss. Just like, Mohicans, for example, they were majorly fighting, war tribes. When they came back, they didn't have PTSD because they had a cultural support around it. They had those solid bonds even at home, not just in war. So that's what I mean, that if a leader is willing to entertain the idea that their job is now to create something that is so tight that maybe the world haven't even seen before. Now, obviously, it's a little bit easier to do this when you have a small company, and when you're starting something from scratch. But there gotta be a way to turn things around as well, because I just don't see it going forward. Maybe the next few years, next 5 years, they can still, stumble along, those big companies with these very strict, choking cultures. We're choking the leader and the leader is choking everyone else and so on. But it's gonna have to change. Something is gonna give. That's my gut feeling.
Well, so much of the work you do is grounded in human connection and the connection to nature. Yet the human existence today has become so tethered to technology, and the corporate culture historically has been driven by more, bigger, faster, longer. And both of these are sort of the antithesis of what actually works to be sort of productive and happy, and sort of this future you're talking about. And then, if you actually think about the future, we also have a generation, or the first generation of children, that have been raised attached to technology from birth, which is frightening. So, how do we begin to unwind these behaviors? I can just share personally, I had a really bad habit, you'll remember, of the first thing I did in the morning was I would reach for my phone before I even got out of bed and start in my emails. And I would get annoyed, and that set my day. And you made me break that. And it's been years. My phone isn't even in my bedroom. And so, what are some of these behaviors that we can start unwinding?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that, most people who kind of hear about the stuff I do, and, my background is basically I spent tremendous amount of time with traditional tribes, living together with them for months at a time in certain areas. I'm passionate about their way of living, understanding. Doesn't matter if it's an Amazonian tribe or a Siberian Chukchi tribe or African San Bushman. It doesn't matter who they are. I was interested about seeing how they operate, right? And the reason I was interested, because if there's something that the Bushmen in Africa and the Shipobo, let's say near the Amazon, have in common, that they run their lives in similar fashion, then I wanted to look at it that means that's a very human way of existence. And if that particular aspect is not available or not present in our modern world, then maybe that is one part of the missing link, right? Now, that doesn't mean that I'm dissing our culture. I'm not someone who wants to go back in the cave. I'm really not. I don't believe that's the future, not the future for our Western culture. I think the future is when you really profoundly understand and you can learn from the past what we are wired for, what is that a human existence, what are the prerequisites for a human existence, the wiring, and then look at our technological amazingness that we created, and now bring them together, understand what is the place for what, So what you just brought as an example is a great example. I think phones, right now, I'm using my phone. It's a fantastic device. It's dream, right? It's access to the world. We can communicate as a global community, right? At the same token, if it's in your bedroom first thing in the morning, it potentially really messes with you hormonally, because open your phone first thing in the morning, you look at it, and sometimes we get negative emails, right? And if that negative email comes in, immediately your hormone household is going to change. We know that first part of your day, your hormone household, the way how it's going to be, it's going to imprint itself onto the rest of your day's hormonal household and how everything is going to fluctuate. So you just need to understand the way how my body is meant to operate is very important. First, I need to get things rolling, the engine going. And once I'm ready, then I'm going to bring on my tools. Technology is a tool. It's not you. Every time when you use a tool, essentially you're adding on to your base. And people just forget what I am and what are the tools. And we become one with them. There's this big trend in Hollywood for a long time now, right? Zombie apocalypse, this whole concept, right? Zombies this way, blah, 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 blah. And everyone is scared of it. And it's kind of fun, And the funny thing is that zombie apocalypse in many regards are here. And people are like, yeah, come on, what are you talking about? Well, have you seen teenagers on street these days? They're like zombies. The amount of accidents that happen because they're literally not there, right? They are one with those gadgets. So we need to separate ourselves from the gadgets and then look at what gadget is for what and use them where they need to be used. So you need to be very linear in this regards. Just know these are my needs as a human being. My physical body is my number one tool. I got to take care of that. There's many things connected to that. And then what are the other tools? Let's utilize them effectively. So you need to do a rehaul of your life and look at things this way. I don't know if this answers the question, but I think that is important to kind of contemplate more.
It does, because I think, behaviors are hard to change, but I think there are very simple ones like that. I mean, it wasn't that difficult to not look at my email. It took a little while, but once I did it, it totally has freed up my morning. And it's made a huge difference. So I think sometimes, this idea of leading a better life that's healthier, detached from technology is difficult for people. And I guess it leads into my next question, which is, I think historically, a lot of leaders have sort of said, leave your personal life at home. Like, work is work, which, I mean, we don't compartmentalize that. If something's going on at home, it's going to affect the work. And I think during the pandemic, I honestly think that a lot of people have PTSD from the pandemic that no one's talking about, but that's something else. But what role or responsibility do corporations have when it comes to helping their teams manage stress or even the mental wellness of employees?
Yeah.
Do they play a role in that?
That is a really good question. And the answer is exactly the amount you wish to have. Okay. So what does that mean? If you have a company and you spend 8-10 hours a day with a group of people near or in the vicinity working on similar projects, right? That's a heck of a lot of time. If you're okay not really caring about those people, that says something about you. And I'm not judging. This is how things were patterned for a long time. So I'm not judging, but you got to be honest to yourself. What is that I wish? And many people will say, you know what? I just don't care about I don't want to care about that person, and I have nothing to do with them. Well, that's that conscious part of your brain that is that needs to be really thought about and realize that, well, you don't care about that person. And you're able to say that, well, we spend 40 hours in near vicinity working on similar kind of stuff together from different angles. If you're okay not caring about that person, probably that not caring aspect of you is present somewhere where you're supposed to care, And when it comes to your kids, let's say, just ask yourself honestly, are you really participating the way you want to? Or you have a certain level of guilt deep inside because you're not attending yourself to those relationships. So this is where it gets tough, because it's not a judgment, but you got to be honest with yourself first if you really want to make a difference, So, and this is what I'm saying, that in my opinion, if you look at your employees as a leader, right? And you look at your employees, all right, so what are the big stressors in general for an individual today? Well, financial matters and pressures is a very viable stress for most people. 185 million people in the United States currently are not able to really save anything. And at the end of the month, they are scratching their head when it comes to the basic needs. Okay, 185 million. This is not my figuring out. This is statistical data available for anyone. 185 million people. Chances are many of your employees belong in that 185 million people. And remind you, whoever is not in that 185 million, that doesn't mean they have, thousands and thousands of dollars saved. Not at all. They're just able to finish the month without the headache, right? So if you have an employee who's thinking about those things, they have the pressures, right? It's going to affect many aspects of their lives. Another very big thing, spousal problems, okay? Huge problem, huge stressor for people in general. So as an employer, as a leader, founder, CEO, what have you, I think I should care about this. That person who's sitting there making decisions, applying themselves to my business, is not bringing her or his best because a big compartment of their brain is shut down. Because when you're stressed out, cortisol hormone levels elevate in your system. And when cortisol hormones elevate in the system, what happens with your system? Your focus narrows, okay? When your focus narrows, it's limited amount of things you're going to be able to think about. You're not going to be able to see outlier processes, right? So you're essentially have an individual there with a bunch of potential. I really believe every human being who lived 30 years, they have 30 years of experience of living, they have a lot of potential in them. Doesn't matter who they are. But you're never going to be accessing that potential at work because the stress, their narrow vision, you're getting a shadow version of them. You hire someone with a great resume, guess what? If you don't really take care of them at every level, you're never going to get the person you hired. Over time, you're getting a less and less version of it. So what that means, corporate wellness is not about just giving them a chance to do some push-ups and stuff like that. You also need to have a gut check. All right, so am I going to help these people financially the way how they should? Should I? Well, we give them what the market says we should give them. We maybe give them minimum wage or market, whatever the market dictates. This person should get paid for this job, right? Well, it's not good enough. We know, statistically speaking, it's not good enough because most people have this very tiny amount of money that is, disposable income, right? That extra money over top of covering the necessary stuff. So, and we know also statistically that if you have, a very little bit amount of money to kind of dispose, it creates a lot of tension and you can't save and you don't feel secure in life. So as a leader, as a part of your corporate wellness program is to pay the people, and this needs to be very specific. You gotta know where you're located. New York is different, Ohio is different, Czech Republic is different, Australia is different. Depending on where you are, you need to understand what is the amount of financial comfort this person needs to have, which is generally talking about 20% they need to have about, net disposable income. So they have that sense that I am putting things aside. I have a security net. I don't need to worry about the day to day. I don't need to worry about the end of the month or even next month or the month after. If you don't help that, the individual is going to be stressed. You will not get the best out of them. Now, imagine just for 1 second, have 100 employees, completely you have available all their life experiences, their genius, 100%. Now, compare that to a generally talking a company who has 100 employees, where most of them are stressed out because of life, and the leadership is stressed out because of the pressure. Now, the amount of genius will come out of this group versus that. If you don't believe it's going to affect your profit bottom line at one point, you're greatly mistaken, because this is a competitive edge. That is the past.
Yeah.
Your choice.
We've talked about the culture of wellness needs to start at the top with leadership. But employees also play a big part of that, because all you need is one bad apple to kind of set sort of things off course as well, even if you have sort of the leadership that is sort of behind creating this culture of wellness. So, what does the ideal employee in a wellness culture look like? Because I think, if leadership is on board, it is, you can have a big personality that thinks it is kumbaya, that all of a sudden creates sort of this faction. And you can't move things forward that way either. So, how do you hire to sort of create this culture?
All right, that's a really good one. Kelly, the questions are smoking. Okay, I'll tell you who the ideal employee is, and I think everyone will understand this. IQ is important, but only so far. EQ is important as well, right? Now, what usually people, leaders, it's very extremely rare that proper amount of IQ and EQ is present in a leader, right? Usually what people try to do is understand, well, I'm really good at IQ, suck at EQ, or have a lot of EQ. IQ is maybe not that much. Marrying those two creates an amazingly capable partnership, right? Now, so let's talk about the ideal, which is someone who has the right amount of EQ and the right amount of IQ. So both, right? Now, this is what a lot of companies looking for. Someone who has that balance. Well, in my opinion, anyone who has that balance, they will not touch with a 6-foot pole a corporation today, at least an average corporation. You will never have a chance to attract that talent. And many companies says that, well, we are attracting the best talent, right? And, good corporations, let's say. Well, I understand what they mean. But when it comes to the future is to attract the people who right at this given moment, who are so balanced and so well that they would just never go to a corporation, never work with them, because right now it's not quite there yet. So in the future, though, if someone is able to create this real meaningful group, this really cohesive thing that we've been talking about here, then suddenly a new layer of extremely good workers will start to show up. The ones who have that balance, who people believe don't exist because they don't exist within the normal corporate world. Well, they don't exist because those cultures, anyone who's balanced in this regards, they will never go there. They're like, no, I don't want to be involved with that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I think there is a layer of employees potentially hovering out there that they could access if they also create this paradigm shift.
Yeah. Well, I want to jump to, I think everyone is not multitasking and they're also not asking questions. Maybe it's because they're so focused. But we did have a couple questions that came in at registration. So maybe we'll jump to those. And then I want to come back to sort of unpacking what this concept of next is as a way of wrapping. Okay. So one of the questions that came in was, how does someone create a culture of wellness when your company is small and there are limited funds to throw at it? I would argue that that's the easiest time to do it.
There you go. Exactly. I mean, after this conversation, probably that question is a little bit already been answered, because many of these things, it's all about really caring and really connecting with another human being on levels that your best wisdom tells you I should. We just don't make the moves, right? So I think you can do so much. Doesn't matter if even if you have zero budget, just simply with the intention, and involving people in decisions and hearing what their take is on things. I brought this really interesting process to a gentleman who was leading a very big company, and he was like, "But how can I connect with people?" So I told this gentleman, well, I know you love playing ping pong, so why don't you do this? That anyone who wants to talk to you, doesn't matter who it is in the company, they can do it to you because you play 3 ping pong games at lunchtime. Just have them, go and play ping pong with you. And while you guys are playing, they can ask you questions. They can bring up ideas, right? So there is ways. And this guy just wanted to connect with the employees. Yeah. So he started to do that, and there are interesting stuff that came out of it.
Yeah. I think, during this idea of like startups have also sort of been, I don't know, there's this whole narrative around them. And I think startups, like small startups that are self-funded, often think, oh my God, I have to have this fully stocked kitchen and ping pongs and happy hour and everything. And I think that, and statistically, it's been proven out that that's not really what people care about. I mean, one of the things that when I had a small design agency that we did that was so easy was we stopped for an hour every day and had lunch together. We would go sit at a table, kind of like family dinner, and we weren't allowed to talk about work. We just talked about anything we wanted to, or didn't talk at all, but no one could eat at their desk. We all ate lunch together. I think it can be super simple and cost nothing, like you said.
Exactly. I mean, talking evolved supposedly for social connections. It didn't evolve because we wanted to explain people how, an atom is working. It didn't evolve for that. Talking evolved for grabbing attention, and then this chatter aspect of the human capability is to connect to others. It's not necessarily to change the world, but when you chatter with another person, you actually connect with them, right? So yeah, very much so.
This is an interesting question that just came in, is what is the key to creating work-life balance when trying to grow a company? Because I think this work-life balance is also a little bit elusive. And I think it does go back to culture, but I'm curious what your advice
I mean, your work is your life. Yeah. There is life without work, work without life. The two doesn't really work. It's an idea that there's a compartmentalized way you can exist. No, your work will affect your family life, and your family life will affect your work. You need to take really good care of yourself, and that's where it all starts. As an individual, it doesn't matter who you are. You got to take full-on responsibility to stop blaming anything and take 100% responsibility for every single thing in your life. And you can say, well, yeah, but, I'm working with this person who's really not nice, Well, if you don't take full-on responsibility, and you don't see that, well, maybe there is something there that I need to really figure out. How many times did it happen to you? And I know many, and for me as well, and I know it for many people, when there was a very uncomfortable situation and you actually buckled down to try to figure it out and ended up leading to an amazing solution. Sometimes, the godmother of I have 4 children and 1 on the way, and the godmother of my 2 oldest ones, it was a person who I really had a hard time with. Such a hard time with that I was like, I don't want to talk to this person. And then I was like, okay, suck it up. Come on. Open yourself up more. Do better. And we ended up being okay, and then close, and really close friends, extremely close friends, and then now family, right? So it's sometimes those harsh situations are pointing to something that you just don't understand. And once you dig in, you will gain a deeper understanding of it, and the problem actually subsides naturally. So I think that mentality is a good idea.
Aside from technology, what are some of the other tools that individuals can access to optimize wellness? And also sort of like, what are some of the biggest hurdles in sort of achieving kind of this holistic wellness?
Doing nothing is one of the tools to learn how to just be, because we are, I'm going to be using something that you can read on, many different places. We are human beings, not human doings. That got lost somewhere along the road. So meditation and all these type of things have been very fashionable for a reason. We all collectively know and feel that it is good, but most people don't know why it's good. So you don't necessarily need to know why it's good, but if you just basically sit down, you close your eyes and just be there like that and allow whatever coming to you, circulate in your brain. Now, so learning how to just be without doing and be okay with it, that is a tool you can use. You need nothing for that. All you need is you yourself, and that's that. Now, interestingly enough, what I just described to you is one of the oldest meditation techniques that has been recorded. So this goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years plus into the abyss of time when someone wrote this down because it was so important, which is this non-directional meditation is one of the names for it, is when you literally just close your eyes. You don't try to do anything. You don't pay attention to your breath, nothing. You just close your eyes and allow the thoughts come to you and don't really engage with them. Or if you want to engage, just let them to come around. You do this for 10 minutes. Watch what happens to you. Yeah. Such a simple thing. The real keys, the real answers to find a balance is not the high-tech things. I'm sorry, it's not. Which is, it's, you don't need to sign up on an app to meditate. Indeed, meditation apps are huge. And you know what? Great. If that's the only way you can do it, great. But really, the bottom line of meditation is shutting the 3D world away from you, right? So you can find those interesting spaces within. So if you have something that's pulling your attention by telling you, oh, and now you do this, you're actually being pulled out of yourself and you're listening outward. So maybe some people are going to be upset about this, but the bottom line is, once you want to get to the bottom of meditation, it's also just inside of you and everything.
Yeah. And Jill also just put in quote, she said, get outside. Like, yes, meditation, or just go and take a walk. And it's kind of amazing because when you do that, that's when you get creative ideas, when you just I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people say that they get their best ideas when they're in the shower in the morning.
Yeah.
It's because you're not thinking about anything other than like washing your hair.
You're not thinking consciously. This is the thing that people overestimate the importance of conscious thought versus when the background is working while you're doing something else. Like if you have a problem, for example, right? Einstein, when he had a problem with something that he came up against, something that was bugging him, what did he do? Did he do what most people today would do, which is like, I'm just going to go at it. I got to figure it out. And when your loved one comes, you're like, no, go away. Come on, I need to figure this out. No, what he did, came up against a problem, picked up his violin and he played the violin, and played the violin. And eventually, as he was enjoying the music and focusing on it, something came to him, put it down, go back to it. Yeah. Now, this is not just Einstein's genius. It's about many, many, many people who succeeded for a long period of time, not like the one-offs, but the ones who created outlier outcomes throughout their entire life. They all have this tendency, to do this kind of stuff.
Are there opportunities for wellness brands to enter the space and create like business to business opportunities? Like, are there any opportunities you see?
That's a good question. Now, I think there is, as long as the business that providing the service is not having their own set of problems. So, for example, you're like, well, okay, Nike has been, or Adidas has been in the world of wellness for long, right? So maybe they should develop an arm that this is the Adidas way, right? Well, I'm like, well, it's a lovely idea. But frankly, first they need to figure their stuff out in this regards, and then they can provide a service to you. So in this regards, I think what's most realistic is that big companies should use some companies, small companies that have a sense, and they have the touch, that personal touch within their company. So they really live and breathe this whole idea, and bring them on board and let that small company try to kind of inject that way of being into the bigger corporation. I think in that regards, there's definitely a space, but it got to be non-judgmental. That's the thing, that it's so easy to think that there's a judgment against big companies and current leaders or leaders who haven't made these changes. I think that's the worst thing one can do, to judge themselves or judge an organization. No, you need to just go in openly and say that I want to open up my company for this business. That doesn't mean you need to be ready to make all the big changes. You just need to open it up first, and then open it up a little bit more and get into the deeper conversation. It's a process, and we need to just be humble about that.
So going back to where we started, we marketed this webinar with an idea of a new industry emerging across business verticals that's intertwined with everything that involves people. And you called this Next, which, it's interesting because we have a new summit called Next. But so what is this never imagined Xenagogue transformation that you've mentioned?
It's not never imagined, it's never examined.
Oh, never examined. You're right. You imagined
examined.
it. It's not even examined.
Yeah. Now, I love the imagine, but it's a different thing. So maybe that's the outcome of it. If you do what's next, then you get the never imagined stuff, right?
True.
So the never examined Xenagogue transformation, essentially, it's a never examined set of guiding structures that needs to be transformed. Most people, they never really go deep enough for themselves to examine what are the things that guiding my decisions, right? And that Xenagogue, that guiding process that deep inside all of us lives there, never examined, never really touched on, at least not for a long time, not for a couple of generations at least, right? That examination that is required for things to start to change, and that will lead to a transformation. So the reason I'm saying it's never examined Xenagogue transformation, because it is a set of guiding structure that leads your decisions without your being aware of those. So that's where people need to be brave enough to look at those guiding structures, look at the things that you don't know, and own what you don't know. Because most of the time when I talk to a leader, this is my first conversation with them. Hey, Chaba, so listen, what I need is this. And they tell me what. And then my answer is always the same. You don't know what you need. Otherwise, you wouldn't be talking to me. If you have a problem, if you would know the answer, you would have fixed it. You don't know the answer, therefore don't tell me what you need. You just be humble to open up, so you can actually really dig deep to find those Xenagogue aspect of yourself, that guiding structure that lives deep inside, that you were not aware of it until you dug in with your community.
Yeah. First of all, I'm so happy that I got to share a little bit with our community of what I get every week with our conversations. Well, that is, I went through a period when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. Like I just pretend the call doesn't happen, but I've gotten better with that.
Oh, you're so much better. Let's not share how bad you used to be.
I know. But I'm so happy to share a little bit of just kind of like the amazing knowledge that you've kind of imparted in my life, and what came as sort of like this, not a transaction, but you're like part of my family now. So to be able to share that, I think means a lot to me. And I just want to let everyone know that we're going to put in the chat right now some other ways that you can kind of get to know what Chaba does a bit more. Carla just did an interview with Chaba and some other people, and it published yesterday. But it's the title is On the Barefoot Heels of Nature Deficit Disorder. So it may not sound like what we've talked about today, but it absolutely does. So definitely read that. And the name came from a book that Chaba wrote about barefoot running. So that's called Barefoot Soul Handbook, available on Amazon. And even if you don't feel like you're going to run outside barefoot, it's still a really great I mean, in New York, that's a hard concept to wrap your brain around. But it's still really great. There's lots of learnings there. And then obviously Chaba has a website, chabalucas.com, and there's a lot there that you can learn from as well. So Chaba, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you very much for everyone who put their toothbrushes down or whatever you were doing, focused here, for, it doesn't matter if it's only for 5 minutes or during the whole hour. And Kelly, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I look forward to connecting with you guys on many levels.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Hey guys. Bye-bye.